A brand new Big 12 transfer portal update, as well as a whip around in college basketball. Texas Tech and Houston play this week. Oh, and I'll be in Utah. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. ESPN Central Texas. I do a weekly hit with those guys, talk all things Big 12 this week. And look, a lot of Baylor DJ Lagway conversation, a lot of college basketball being ruined by NBA players, a lot of really good talk about women's basketball in the Big 12. All of that for you. You're like, I don't even care about none of that stuff. I don't want to hear about the realignment. All right, well, this bonus episode is for the everydayers, people who are like, yeah, I like listening to that show, and I like the whip around, I like the Big 12 coverage. For you, that's what this is. Nothing crazy. It's just you and I coming together and talking about sports, all right? All right? You ready for it? Let's do it.
And welcome back to the Press Box here on this Taco Tuesday. Joining us now is Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12, and host of Westwood One Morning Show. Drake, happy Tuesday to you. Appreciate the time.
Ward, always a pleasure. Excited to talk some Big 12.
Before we get into basketball, Aaron had a little question about the Baylor Bears for you.
All right, Aaron, what you got? First-time listener, long-time caller, right?
You know me. I think rightfully been pretty down on Baylor football with the whole bringing back Aranda thing and having to rely on the portal again, which they haven't been great at. Does the DJ Lagway signing give you any hope? I'm kind of in a little bit of a positive attitude after their portal signings, especially him.
Yeah, you are. There's one. You still need 21 more, right? That's the one piece, right? You know, there's one that I'm really excited about. The other 21, I have questions. That said, the reason I would be an optimist if I was a Baylor fan, and as somebody who graduated from there, I love to see Baylor win. I like to see Baylor succeed. They went and got dudes in this portal class, not just from Colorado and Kansas State, which are two pretty solid programs. They went and got guys from South Carolina, Oklahoma, Florida, LSU, Texas, and those guys are now Baylor Bears. That is, and the way DJ Lagway has recruited his former teammates at Florida to Baylor, that's a very good sign for the Bears. Now, have they built 22 players that are top end of the Big 12 Conference? Have they built a roster top end of the Big 12 Conference? Not yet. I still have to see it. But, Aaron, they went from a 3-9, 4-8 team just based on what they lost and the lack of gain to now looking like a Big 12 squad that could teeter on the 7-9 win mark. I think what Baylor has done has at the very least revived morale in the locker room, revived morale around campus. And for that, I give it a win this offseason, a win for Baylor, a cautious, hesitant W.
Drake, in the Big 12 men's basketball, making noise across the country as we knew they would, as one of the best teams, one of the best conferences, if not the best conference in college basketball. But Kansas will be without Coach Bill Self again, a little health scare for Bill Self, and he will be without the Jayhawks tonight in Colorado. Is that a concern?
Yeah. Big question around, I'm not too concerned that Kansas will be able to win without him because we've seen this a bit over the course of the last couple of years in the off seasons too, kind of murmurs on Bill Self's health. I trust Kansas. The way they've been playing basketball recently has been much more solid. Their win against Iowa State, dominating win against Baylor. Those were both great at home. Now they go back out on the road, but they play Colorado, who is beatable. They play Kansas State, who is definitely beatable. Kansas State is winless at the time of us talking in Big 12 play. That said, Bill Self, his presence not being on the sideline has to be felt. You can't have that good of a head coach and say that, without him, we'll be just fine. Yeah, you'll be okay, but I wouldn't say just fine. He's the reason Kansas is what they are during his tenure. And that's a decade, 2 decades long tenure now for him in Lawrence. Bill Self's health issues are something to monitor seriously in the offseason. He's still got the spark. You listen to his press conferences. He wants to coach. But there are some guys, example in the NFL, or I guess college football, Jerry Kill is one of the great coaches, great minds in the sport, but he's dealt with so many medical issues his career that in the end, he just had to say, hey, I can't keep doing this. You look at North Carolina, they went through the same thing, 4 or 5 years ago. I wouldn't be shocked if we take a serious look at Bill Self and his future with Kansas this offseason, not because he needs to go, but because for health concerns, health purposes, a step back could be right. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is exactly where I go every day of the NFL postseason. This weekend, I'll be glued to FanDuel. I don't love the NFL all that much, but I do when it comes to the NFL having playoff games where I can go win even bigger. FanDuel.com, profit boosts. You'll see those this Sunday. Profit boosts are really cool because you can like ride the favorite when you think the team's going to control the matchup, or take a shot on the underdog, or build a parlay around the players and moments you think will decide the game. With profit boosts, you get even bigger winnings. When you win, FanDuel pays you out instantly, which is the perfect play for playoff football. FanDuel is the best place to get in on the action all playoff long. FanDuel.com to get your NFL playoff profit boosts every game day. FanDuel.com to get your NFL playoff profit boosts. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of me, the place that I sports bet. I love it. FanDuel.
Drake, there's some good teams coming out of the Big 12 for women's basketball in college, and you look at the Baylor Bears, the Baylor women's, they moved up to number 14. Is this a team that you think could make it to the dance and really make some noise?
Yeah, I think Baylor on the women's side, they are built to make noise in the postseason as a team that I see getting better and better over the course of the year. That's how I felt at the beginning of the season. And Jacob, it almost seemed like for Baylor, what I expected at least, is they'll go out there, they'll kind of get beat around a bit in the pre-conference and the non-conference. They'll get into conference play and struggle to get settled. But by the time we hit, early February, the women will click on all cylinders. Instead, they've stayed pretty consistent under Nikki Collin for a portion of this year, and that's a great sign if you're a Baylor fan. 6-1 in Big 12 play. Really, really good. Their only loss was to Texas Tech, who we know is a strong Texas Tech team. Now, do you want that one back? For sure. Absolutely you do. And I think if you rematch with them, you've got a really good shot to win, but they're 19-1 right now. It's a very good Texas Tech. For Baylor, you face UCF and Houston coming up. Both those games at home. On the women's side, ton of confidence that Nikki Collin and company could be the number one overall seed in the Big 12 tournament come the end of the year. And their ranking is only going to climb from 14 up. They're ahead of schedule. Baylor is ahead of schedule, and I think they put that ugly Texas loss completely in the rearview mirror.
What about on the men's side, the Baylor men continuing to struggle, and it's pretty shocking to see the number of blowouts against elite teams when, 2 years ago, Baylor was still one of those elite teams that was getting 1 seeds.
Yeah, this is a dour thing to say and brings me no joy as somebody who watched Baylor win a basketball national championship as a student there. But that's it. This season is one of those that you've already accepted in Big 12 play. You're kind of packing in. Now, Baylor's had slow starts before, but those were years we had VJ Edgecombe or Keontae George. You've got a really good player in Cameron Carr, but he's not VJ Edgecombe. He's not Keontae George. He's not a franchise-changing player at the NBA level. For Baylor, it's the way they've lost these conference games. Not just, hey, a couple whistles here and there, and maybe they beat Iowa State. Not really. A couple whistles here and there, they're gonna upset Houston. No, that game at Kansas, same way, a blowout. 3 of their last 4 have been double-digit losses. Really impressed with their road win against Oklahoma State. But look, the impossible task was for Scott Drew to put together a roster of guys that did not exist 6 months ago, that were not Baylor Bears 6 months ago, from top to bottom. How does he build it? Rob Wright exiting the facility. That was a big blow, and they have not responded to this point. I think Baylor's ceiling right now, because they'll likely lose to Texas Tech. It's a very good Texas Tech team. I don't know if I can trust Baylor on the road against Cincinnati or West Virginia unless they turn it around quick in these next 4 after Texas Tech, where they play 4 teams that are not ranked. They got to meet Iowa State, BYU, Louisville. Baylor needs to go 9. They need to have 9 wins in Big 12 play. And I'm struggling to find those 9 wins with them sitting at 1-4. This is an NIT team as of today.
For the Baylor Bears, I was going to ask how big is this week, but you just answered that question. And if this is an NIT team, unless they win the Big 12 championship, which who knows what happens in tournament play. But if this is an NIT team in this situation, is that a step back for this program, considering that you looked up and there were 0 names on this roster last spring?
Yeah, for sure. A step back, no doubt. Do I still think that Scott Drew has got it in the bag? Do I trust Scott Drew? Absolutely. Now, he has, no surprise, failed to make the second weekend since the national championship run. It's been a weird couple of years for Baylor basketball, dating back to Kendall Brown when he was playing that season after they won it all in Indianapolis, and they lost to North Carolina as the 1 seed versus the 8 seed. There have been question marks why Baylor cannot win in the postseason. And, I've been on the forefront of this saying the Bears were at their best when they had the Maceo Teagues of the world, the Mark Vitals of the world, who they coached up from the ground up in their program. What Scott is so good at is development. He's lost a lot of great assistants who were awesome at helping him in that category. What Scott probably has to get back to here, the secret sauce that got him winning, was bringing players in from UNC Asheville, bringing players in from Alabama, the outcasts from Alabama, and saying, hey, we'll take you, but we need you for 2 or 3 years in our program. If you can commit for 2 or 3 years to this program, and fans can once again buy a jersey of a Baylor Bear basketball player and say, I know this guy's going to still be here next year and the year after. If you can build that, you've got a very positive thing for you. And look, a myriad of freshmen on the roster this year for Baylor that they could keep and build off of next year. But there are also quite a few seniors. Dan Skillings is a guy you throw in there. You say, hey, that's a senior. You're looking to lead this basketball team this year. I think Cameron Carr, his decision in the offseason will be huge. Baylor has to set a mini reset button, but what that reset button is not overhaul everything. It is build ground up with a bunch of guys on the roster who you know. And Scott's got a long leash. He should have a long leash. If Scott wants to go and get 9 freshmen next year and 3 guys out of the portal and then build off that team for 3 or 4 years and start winning games again with an old roster, he'll do it, and he'll do it with success.
So Scott Drew and the Bears go out and get James Najee, and of course that brought in a whole lot of controversy around the college basketball landscape. Now, with that being said, of course, it's not like this guy is dropping 15, 20 points per game, but do you think this is going to change the landscape of college basketball in the Big 12 and pretty much just all over the place with guys getting former NBA draftees and or guys that are playing internationally and bring them into the college basketball roster?
Yeah, really good question here, and that's a big look. If I'm Ward Weiss and I've coached football and I know what football, I've coached at a level of amateurism. Like I love what it is. I love how the format is. If I am Drake Toll, who loves college basketball, I love watching my favorite player go play for 3 years at any given university. The cool part about watching at the time Charlie Brewer come through Baylor, or any of those lists of quarterbacks. Charlie Brewer is kind of a random one to pick out there, but Charlie Brewer, when he played Oklahoma 28-3, that legendary game in Waco that Baylor would end up losing, but Chuck was in the fold. He was a guy that had stayed despite controversy, and you don't have that anymore. Instead, not only do you have guys that are leaving early and not giving you much in their services for more than a year, you also have guys who have played pro ball at the pro levels. Now, I need to be very clear. It is not making Baylor the big bad monster. BYU is not the big bad monster for signing these guys. For years and years in the SEC, they could do whatever they wanted and pay whatever they wanted, get whatever they wanted. And now Baylor said, okay, if it's legal, either I do it or Auburn's going to do it. Either I do it or Alabama's going to do it. So I'm going to do it until you tell me I cannot. That is a very strong move by Scott Drew, saying, look, unless you change the rules, I'm going to use them to my advantage. There's not some secret morale thing. You're like, oh, wow, he's killing his program because he signed a guy who played professionally. And you also have to remember there are so many Purdue players who played professionally in Europe. You've just got to set a blanket rule to say, hey, if you've played X amount of pro, if you've been paid to play basketball, you cannot compete in the NCAA. Or if you've been paid to play basketball, you can based on these stipulations. There has to be a guardrail somewhere in here. A ton of controversy around it. I think Baylor is doing the right thing by its own standards because they're playing by the rules, but they're playing with the big boys who have bent the rules for decades.
Drake Toll, Westwood One Morning Show, Locked On Big 12 with us in the press box here on ESPN Central Texas. How big a week is this in Big 12 basketball because of the fact that there's some teams right now that could separate themselves in this conference, isn't there?
Yeah, we can still decide something. We can learn some things, at least. Like I haven't learned if UCF is elite. They look like a tournament team, but they have a 13.5-point spread awaiting them at Iowa State in a game tonight. I look at an Oklahoma State team that if they go on the road, they upset TCU, they're back in the conversation of, okay, can we get their RPI high enough to argue them into the NCAA tournament? And TCU's in a must-win spot. They dropped to 1-5 of the Big 12. They're going to be out of the picture, and I think squarely out of the picture. Texas Tech at Baylor. If Texas Tech wins this game, they've proven again they're likely a top 10 team in the country, and Baylor at 1-5 in Big 12 play, likely out. Utah, Kansas State, two teams whose seasons are over. They're fighting for NIT. They're fighting. Kansas State is fighting to keep Jerome Tang as the head coach. That's what their team is shooting for right now. They could fall to 0-6 in conference play. And then Kansas, they need to continue to build. If Colorado wins, you start to ask the question, okay, could they weasel their way into the NCAA tournament? But if Kansas wins, they are now squarely, even more squarely a lock for the postseason. Arizona, we will learn almost nothing about this week. They're just that good. They're incredibly good, and they play Cincinnati at home. They'll blow the doors off of Cincinnati. They're the most lackluster team right now in the conference. And they're not the worst team. They're the most lackluster because the leadership has just been so faulty under Wes Miller at Cincinnati. Then if West Virginia goes on the road to beat Arizona State, they're that fringe team that would be really fun to watch for me in the NCAA tournament, but I'm just not sure if we can get them there. It's going to take a lot to push them to the postseason. That's what we'll get this week, and then I'm looking forward so much to Saturday. Houston travels to Texas Tech. That's going to be a classic of a ball game. Very, very happy. I'll also be at Utah, BYU, and then number 13 BYU will host number 1 Arizona on Monday. I'll be at both of those games over in Provo. So really excited for the week ahead in men's basketball.
Drake Toll with us in the press box here on ESPN Central Texas. Drake, tell them how they can find you.
Yeah, at Drake C. Toll Show on Twitter, wherever you find your podcasts, as well as YouTube with Locked On Big 12. Aaron Ward, can't thank you guys. I'm 4 weeks into the Drake Toll Show on Westwood One, with affiliates from Rochester to Tucson, and you guys taught me everything that I know, a ton that I know, the baseline of what I know about radio. And without both of you, I wouldn't be where I am or be able to host a 3-hour radio show alone without water. I do that every day. I try to challenge myself, really. And you two guys are great. Jacob, you're in great hands.
Oh, thanks, Drake. Appreciate the time. As always, we'll talk to you again next week, and enjoy the basketball this weekend.
Pleasure. Thanks, Ward.
All right, there he goes. Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12, and host of the Westwood One Morning Show. You can hear that on satellite radio.
I like those guys. Let's cough. I like those guys a lot. Love you guys. This has been and always will be Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.